Welcome to The Explainer. So, I want you to picture something for a second. Imagine an ancient civilization of, roughly 5 million people. We're talking a society that had flush toilets, brilliantly planned cities, and a booming international trade network, literally over 5,000 years ago. That was the Indus Valley Civilization. And yet, despite all of this absolute brilliance, their language? It remains completely undeciphered today. It's like their true voices are just permanently shrouded in mystery.
Which brings us to the biggest puzzle of all, right? How does a highly advanced civilization of 5 million people just vanish? Poof. There is absolutely zero mention of the Indus civilization in any later historical records. It's as if they were completely erased from our collective memory. So, today, we're going to put on our historical detective hats and try to solve this mystery together. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's a quick roadmap for our explainer today. We're going to hit the discovery, origins, and urban marvels, daily life and innovations, the global trade network, unraveling the Indus mysteries, and finally, how they actually disappeared. Let's get to it. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the lost civilization discovered. Now, you'd think finding a 5,000-year-old empire would be pretty straightforward, right? Well, actually, it was a seriously bumpy ride. Back in 1826, a British deserter going by the name Charles Mason just kind of stumbled onto these massive earthen mounds. Local folklore actually claimed these ruins belonged to a cursed medieval king, and it gets even crazier. The ancient bricks buried there were of such incredibly high quality that British railway contractors unknowingly stole them, literally dug them up to build modern train tracks. I mean, no way, right? It wasn't until 1921 that the Archaeological Survey of India, led by John Marshall, began a proper, full-scale excavation. That eventually led to the massive global announcement in 1924 that, hey, we just found a forgotten 5,000-year-old civilization. Moving right along to Section 2, Origins and Urban Marvels. So these people actually trace their roots back to early semi-nomadic hunter-gatherers in Mehrgarh. But everything shifted when they migrated down into the fertile lowlands of the Indus River around 3300 BCE. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how that migration changed human history forever. Because settling on a river floodplain, it creates this massive logical domino effect. Step 1, seasonal floods naturally irrigate and replenish the soil. Step 2, that creates a huge food surplus. Step 3, when you have extra food, your population explodes, and people can actually specialize in other labor instead of everyone just farming. And finally, step 4, that specialization leads directly to urbanization, centralized authority, and boom, you've got a civilization. Let's look at how this intense organization translated into their actual city planning. Check out this ratio, 4 to 2 to 1. The Indus Valley used a super modern grid-like design for their cities. But what's truly mind-boggling here is the sheer scale of their standardization. Every single brick used in construction, we're talking across thousands of square miles, and a population of 5 million people strictly adhered to this exact 4 to 2 to 1 ratio. That kind of universal consistency, it's just astounding. But their engineering brilliance went way beyond just perfectly sized bricks. They literally invented the world's first flush toilets. Almost every house was connected to a highly engineered, covered city-wide sewer system. They built these massive waterproof communal tanks like the famous Great Bath using bitumen-coated bricks. They even constructed a highly advanced dockyard in Lothal with tidal lock gates to manage the intense monsoon flooding. I mean, put that into perspective for a second. The average Indus household enjoyed hygiene standards that wouldn't be seen again in Europe for literally thousands of years. All right, let's shift gears a bit. Section 3, Daily Life and Innovations.
So we know they were incredible engineers who clearly worked hard. But how did these ancient people actually, unwind? How did they enjoy themselves? Well, the artifacts show a remarkably vibrant lifestyle. Their diet was rich in sesame and barley, ingredients that are actually still widely eaten in South Asia today. And they loved a good game. They played with cubicle dice, engaged in complex strategy games. Archaeologists even found an early ancestor of modern chess called chaturanga. On top of that, they were absolute fashion pioneers. They were the very first civilization to spin and weave cotton. And their jewelry industry? Staggering. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of mass-produced bangles excavated from these ancient cities. Just incredible. And all of this highly specialized craftsmanship brings us perfectly to Section 4, the global trade network. Because they had completely mastered double cropping in their agriculture, that massive food surplus we talked about freed up a huge chunk of the population to become this powerhouse of international seafaring merchants. They were actually so globally prominent that the ancient Mesopotamians had a very specific name for them in their cuneiform texts, the Meluhans, and their commerce was insanely organized. To manage this vast trade network, they used these beautifully carved animal seals as tamper-proof commercial signatures. Think of them basically as early corporate logos. Plus, they utilized standard binary weights to guarantee precise, fair trading across thousands of miles.
Now, what's really interesting here is this quote from a Mesopotamian seal dating way back to circa 2000 BCE. It belonged to a man named Shu-ilishu, and his literal job title was Translator of the Meluhan language. They were so deeply integrated into the global economy that entire Indus expat communities, complete with their own culturally specific cookware and kids' toys, lived and thrived out in Arabia and Mesopotamia. But all of this crazy organization and wealth really begs a crucial question. Who did they worship? And were they really this peaceful, egalitarian utopia that early historians always painted them to be? Well, it's time to find out in Section 5, Unraveling the Indus Mysteries. For decades, early historians kind of just applied their own subjective biases to the artifacts. They came up with arbitrary labels like the dancing girl or the priest king, based on, well, nothing more than their own whims, honestly. But if we actually look at the hard evidence, we have to rethink this whole idea that they were a purely egalitarian utopia with zero rulers. Excavations clearly show multi-story luxury homes existing right alongside much smaller ones. That proves social stratification right there. Plus, this Mesopotamian inscription referencing Ibra, man of Meluha, among a list of kings, it strongly suggests they absolutely had centralized leaders. Now, they might not have been autocratic god kings, but they for sure had powerful first citizens or wealthy merchant lords running the show. Next up, let's tackle the deeply entrenched myth that they never fought a single war. The hard facts tell a much more human and violent story. Archaeologists have dug up hordes of weapons, maces, daggers, axes, spears, the whole shebang. Skeletal remains actually show significantly high rates of cranial trauma. And let's not forget the architecture. They built massive defensive citadels with walls up to 18 meters thick. I mean, you don't build an 18-meter thick wall just to keep out a flood, right? The undeniable evidence points straight to long-distance warfare and violent internal conflicts. We also need to explicitly dismantle the biggest myth of all here, the old colonial fantasy that this civilization was completely wiped out by an invading race of Aryans. The hard archaeological fact is, there's absolutely zero evidence of a catastrophic race war. None. There's no certain genetic shift in the population whatsoever. Even the oldest Sanskrit texts use the word Arya to mean learned nobles, not a biological race. It's a complete myth. So, if we can completely rule out a massive foreign invasion, why on earth do they suddenly disappear from history? I mean, how does an empire spanning thousands of miles with millions of people just collapse? The answer to that is found in Section 6, How They Actually Disappeared. The ultimate tragedy of the Indus Valley Civilization is that the very environment that created their incredible abundance eventually turned against them. Around 1900 BCE, this devastating domino effect of climate change kicked off. The monsoon system shifted south, causing their vital rivers to literally change course and dry up. Without that water, crop yields absolutely plummeted, which obviously led to massive food shortages. At the exact same time, their major trade partners over in Mesopotamia were facing their own severe turmoil, which caused the global economic networks to just crumble. Stripped of their food and their wealth, public administration collapsed. These once great, highly organized cities fractured into internal, violent strife. And those perfectly engineered streets? They ultimately ended up flooded with raw sewage as the entire society broke down.
But as tragic as that sounds, it's absolutely vital to realize something. They didn't just vanish in a flash. The people of the Indus dispersed. They ruralized. They migrated east toward the Gangetic Plain and south down into the Deccan Plateau, and in doing so, they passed their cultural DNA right onto new regional descendants. You see, historical amnesia is actually kind of the default in human history. So while their advanced cities definitely fell, their agricultural methods, their games, and their religious symbols, like the famous Proto-Shiva Pashupati seal, survived, adapted, and lived on for centuries. Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. If the Indus Valley's legacy never really vanished, but was actually just absorbed and transformed over time, what other chapters of our ancient history are we completely misremembering? I really hope this explainer has empowered you to keep questioning those outdated historical narratives. Thank you so much for exploring this absolutely incredible civilization with me today.